Every race weekend used to mean the same thing for Samantha Busch, watching her husband compete for a championship. Now it means something else entirely. Nearly 2 months after losing two-time Cup champion Kyle Busch, Samantha just shared the most honest look yet into what these Sundays actually feel like for her family. And it's a reminder of something this sport doesn't talk about enough. What happens to the people left behind? Samantha Busch posted an emotional message on Instagram this past race weekend, reflecting on life without Kyle nearly 2 months after his passing. In the post, she described still instinctively searching for his name on the leaderboard and admitted how surreal it feels watching races from home instead of the garage. She also used the message to thank the NASCAR community, from fellow drivers to fans, for the support shown to her and her 2 children, Brexton and Lennix, since Kyle's death. A major part of the post looked back on the pre-race tribute at the Coca-Cola 600, where multiple drivers wore Kyle's signature number 8 gear and recreated his trademark bow during driver introductions. To understand why this post is resonating so widely, you have to understand what Kyle Busch meant to this sport for nearly 2 decades. He wasn't just a 2-time champion. He was one of the most recognizable, most polarizing, most consistently dominant drivers of his generation. A guy fans either loved fiercely or loved to root against, but never ignored. That kind of presence leaves a hole in the garage that doesn't close quickly. The Coca-Cola 600 tribute Samantha described wasn't a small gesture. Having drivers across different teams, different manufacturers, and in some cases different rivalries all choosing to wear his gear and mimic his signature celebration says something about how deeply respected he was within the sport, even by people who battled him on the track for years. For Samantha specifically, this post reveals the part of grief that often gets overlooked publicly: the ripple effect on children. She described watching her son Brexton light up every time a driver walked out wearing his father's shirt, and that detail matters. It shows this loss isn't confined to one person. It's a family navigating something enormous in a very public space, with a 9-year-old processing his father's absence in real time, on camera, at the track his dad used to dominate. This isn't the kind of story you break down like a pit strategy call, but there's real substance here worth examining. What stands out most is how Samantha framed this. She didn't just describe pain, she paired it with gratitude, specifically toward the NASCAR community as a whole. That distinction matters. She's describing a garage that functioned less like a competitive workplace and more like an extended family during the worst weeks of her life. NASCAR wives showing up with meals, friends stepping in during moments she couldn't function. Drivers, some of whom compete directly against each other every single week, unifying for one gesture at the Coke 600. That kind of collective response isn't guaranteed in professional sports. Competitors are often taught to compartmentalize, to stay locked into their own performance, their own point standings, their own championship pushes. What Samantha described was the opposite of that: an entire sport pausing its competitive instincts to grieve alongside one family. There's also something worth noting about how she's choosing to process this publicly. Grief looks different for everyone, and going public with it, race weekend after race weekend, carries its own weight. But by sharing it, she's giving language to something a lot of NASCAR families quietly carry: the reality that behind every driver on that grid is a spouse and children who absorb the risk of this sport every single week. The reaction across the NASCAR fan base has been overwhelmingly emotional, and it's easy to see why. Fans who watch Kyle Busch compete for 2 decades are seeing a side of the sport they don't often get: the human cost behind the trophies and the point standings. Comment sections and fan forums are filled with people sharing their own memories of Kyle, some from meeting him personally, others simply from watching him race since he was a teenager. Media coverage has largely mirrored that tone, treating this less as a news story and more as a tribute, focusing on the Coke 600 moment specifically as one of the most genuine displays of unity the sport has produced in recent memory. Looking ahead, there are really 2 directions this ongoing story can take. Best case scenario, the NASCAR community continues showing up the way it has Brexton and Lennix grow up surrounded by a sport that treats them like family rather than a name from the past. And Samantha's willingness to share her story publicly ends up helping other families quietly going through something similar. Worst case scenario, as racing seasons continue and news cycles move on, that same level of visible support fades, leaving Samantha and her children navigating this loss with far less public connection to the community that once surrounded Kyle every single weekend. Given how deeply embedded this family has been in the sport for almost 20 years, the more likely outcome leans toward the first scenario. NASCAR has a long history of taking care of its own. What did the Coca-Cola 600 tribute to Kyle Busch mean to you as a fan watching it live? Drop your memories of Kyle Busch in the comments below, on the track or off it. Moments like this deserve to be remembered by the people who watched him build his legacy. And if you want more honest human coverage of the stories behind the sport, make sure you subscribe to Sportswire USA.